Everybody sing Alleluia, for the Lord has risen, it is true. Everybody sing Alleluia. 30 years he walked the land, Alleluia, Alleluia. To all in need he lent his hand, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Everybody.
Welcome to this playlist, which is devoted to an analysis and better understanding of the Second Vatican Council. I want to apologize for neglecting this playlist. I think that I've been suffering from a YouTube version of writer's block. With the last installment in this playlist, we wrapped up our discussion of Lumen Gentium, a document of the Vatican Council. Now we'll move on to the next document of the Council, Orientalium Ecclesiarum, which was a decree on the Catholic churches of the Eastern Rites. We'll do 2 or 3 installments on this document. In the first installment, we'll concentrate on some apparent differences in approach of this document compared to Sacrosanctum Concilium, another document of the Second Vatican Council. The Council seems to apply a double standard for the Eastern churches compared to the Western Church. Let me explain. Orientalium Ecclesiarum says, the Catholic Church holds in high esteem the institution's liturgical rite, ecclesiastical traditions, and the established standards of the Christian life of the Eastern churches, for in them distinguished as they are for their venerable antiquity. So the Council Fathers held the Eastern Catholic churches' liturgical rites in high esteem because they're distinguished for their antiquity. But what about the Western churches? Sacrosanctum Concilium says, elements of the liturgy not only may, but ought to be changed with the passage of time if they have suffered from the intrusion of anything out of harmony with the inner nature of the liturgy or have become unsuited to it. So, for the Eastern churches, their liturgical rites are distinguished for their venerable antiquity, but for the Western Church and its very ancient Latin Mass, the Council says elements of the liturgy ought to be changed. There's no high esteem for the antiquity of the Latin Masses in Sacrosanctum Concilium.
He says, what's good for the goose is good for the gander too.
Article 6 of Orientalium Ecclesiarum says, all members of the Eastern Rite should know and be convinced that they can and should always preserve their legitimate liturgical rite and their established way of life, and that these may not be altered except to obtain for themselves an organic improvement. They should take steps to return to their ancestral traditions. Now, this decree almost seems to echo the decree of the Council of Trent, which declared that the Latin Mass in the Western Church could not be altered. It stated, if anyone says that the received and approved rites of the Catholic Church, accustomed to be used in the administration of the sacraments, may be despised or omitted by the ministers without sin and at their pleasure, or may be changed by any pastor of the churches, whomsoever, to other new ones, let him be anathema. So, seemingly disregarding the Council of Trent, Sacrosanctum Concilium says, the Council also desires that, where necessary, the rites be revised carefully in the light of sound tradition, that they may be given new vigor to meet the circumstances and needs of modern times. Later in the document it says that the commission that it's setting up will regulate pastoral liturgical action throughout the territory and promote studies and necessary experiments. So, according to the Vatican Council, the liturgy of the Eastern Council may not be revised, but the liturgy of the Western Church is to be revised. There's not much of a desire to preserve the Western Church's legitimate liturgical rite and established way of life.
He says, what's good for the goose is good for the gander too.
In regard to the Eastern churches, Orientalium Ecclesiarum says, the Sacred Ecumenical Council confirms and approves the ancient discipline of the sacraments existing in the Oriental churches, as also the ritual practices connected with their celebration and administration, and ardently desires that this should be reestablished if circumstances warranted. On the other hand, in regard to the sacraments of the Western Church, Sacrosanctum Concilium says, both the rites for the baptism of adults are to be revised. The rite for the baptism of infants is to be revised. The rite and formulas for the sacrament of penance are to be revised. The rite of confirmation is to be revised. Both the ceremonies and texts of the ordination rites are to be revised. The marriage rite, now found in the Roman ritual, is to be revised. So, for the Eastern churches and the ancient discipline of the sacraments, that's confirmed and approved. But for the Western Church, every single one of the sacraments were to be revised. No confirmation of the ancient sacraments is to be found in the Vatican Council for the Western Church.
He said, what's good for the goose is good for the gander too.
But regarding the divine office, Orientalium Ecclesiarum says, Eastern clerics and religious should celebrate in accordance with the prescriptions and traditions of their own established custom of the divine office, which from the ancient times has been held in high honor in all the Eastern churches. In regard to the divine office in the Western Church, though, Sacrosanctum Concilium says, when the office is revised, these norms are to be observed. So for the Eastern churches, they're encouraged to follow the ancient customs in regard to the divine office. For the Western churches, the divine office was to be revised.
He said, what's good for the goose is good for the gander too.
For more information on the changes to the divine office, see our video called Second Sleep, which is linked down below. I think an interesting question is, why did the Council Fathers hold the ancient liturgies of the Eastern Church in such high regard, yet seemed not to hold their own liturgy in very high regard, though it was just as ancient? Please let me know what you think. Please post your comments down below. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment. We'll try to be back again in a week or so with a follow-up in regard to Orientalium Ecclesiarum. But in the meantime, please pray for the Church.
Sacrosanctum Concilium.